And there it is. There's three of us. Welcome to episode 334 of This Uncanny Earth. Tonight, we're going to be talking about sacred locations. But before we start talking, somebody's having some hellacious feedback.
Hmm?
Yeah, somebody's
Hold
got
on.
some feedback going.
How's that?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I got
How's that? Hold on.
try again.
Better?
Yeah, that's better.
It's the plug. It's just how it is.
You need to get a new plug. Your operation's shady. Anyways, welcome. 334. Tonight we're going to be talking about sacred locations. I will be your moderator for the night, and we are going to dig into it relatively quickly. It's hot. It's been hot. Heat. There you go. That's how Ohio is. Hot, heat, heat. More heat coming next week. 90s back again. Okay? So, gentlemen, do you have anything you would like to start the show off with before we get into this thing?
Just a general warning, without being too deep about it. GPT-5 has just released, and Sam Altman himself has been comparing it to Project Manhattan and saying that it scares him. And the federal government just gained access to it for $1. So if you're using AI or ChatGPT specifically, be very careful with that and pay attention to what you're doing. And that's all.
I'm not worried. Not even a little.
Yeah, you
Well,
don't
there you
really
go.
use it that much.
I'm not worried one bit, and I think it's going to be overblown. But apart from the doom and gloom, we have better news because this is the last show. Not permanently for real. I know everybody was going to be scared. That's why I let it hang there. This is the last show of this season.
It'd be nice
the
if you just
season
didn't leave
that's-
it hanging everywhere.
The
Thanks.
season is apparently like 4 years long, 5 years long. Because we haven't had seasons before. But we will be taking
But
the break
it's a
in
good thing.
September.
It's a
Yeah,
good
we're
thing.
going to take the break in September to refresh. We're going to do this every 3 months. We're going to take these breaks, as we talked about when we first got back together with everything, and to help get our minds back into everything and to just relax a little bit and then catch back up and get things centered again. So this will be the last show until September 4th, I believe,
That is
which
correct.
will begin with a big announcement and a new partnership. I'm just going to allude to it. I'm not going to say so yet, but in September we'll have new partnerships, new friends, and that's all I've got for everybody.
And also, we'll be coming back hot and ready, like a Little Caesar's Pizza, with cloning. That will be our first episode back. So we'll be talking about cloning and how you can clone. No, we're not going to tell you how to do it. You can pay us. So that's what we have coming up. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show. Like I said, there won't be one next week or the week after, but we'll be back in September for some all new great stuff and 3 months of great programming, which will take us, let's see, November. So almost Christmas time will be.
Yep.
We'll be like school. We'll get to a little vacation. All right. I like it. I love it. Let's get into it. So tonight we are talking about sacred locations. Now, I thought about this quite fleetingly. I didn't really give it much thought, because that's what I do. If you guys want to know my secret, there isn't a secret. I just wing it. Are your oddities going too, or are you still going to do those?
No, I'm still going to do those.
That's good. That's good. And I'll be working on my thing as well. So sacred locations, there was a plethora of places I could have chosen for tonight. We could have talked about the Vatican. We could have talked about any of the Indian burial grounds. We could have talked about really anything, to be quite fair and frank. But I took 3 specific places that I didn't know as much about as I thought I did. The last one I knew somewhat about, but I didn't know some of the more intricate parts of it. So I'm going to start the show off with a question, and either of you can answer, and both of you can answer this question. What do you think makes a site sacred? What do you think separates a site that is sacred from a site like, say, Spiders last week when we were talking about Auschwitz, or what was the other place? What was your last example last week?
The forest on Mount Fuji.
Oh, yeah, Aokigahara Forest. So, what do you gentlemen think?
Well, I think it's in two parts. I think part of it is intent, because I think a lot of times people will find a place and they'll set up, well, in more ancient times. These days you don't see it quite so much, but in more ancient times they would look for a place where they felt more able to commune with their gods or with the land or something of that nature. And they would decide this is a great place for it. And they would set up their churches, set up their shrines, and from then on afterwards, it would be sacred to them. The other part of it, though, is circumstance. I think people come across places that feel different, or that maybe they're led to, or that are somehow unusual. And they might have a myth or a story or a legend that says, well, there was a person here and they met the Lord, or they met somebody here and that person gave them a sacred gift, so this land itself is sacred. And you see that fairly often in places too, and sometimes you see that in places where it's not explicitly sacred, like the story of how they founded the country of Mexico, or they decided this is where we're going to live and what became Mexico. They said they saw the eagle clutching a snake on a little island or something like that. And it was all a bunch of omens rolled all together. And they said, that's obviously a sign. This is a sacred place. And it's not sacred now because it's a big urban center of development. But I think the concept is still the same. I think those are the two ways generally that we would describe a place becoming a sacred spot, if not believing it was already a sacred spot before we got there.
Okay. Steve Orelli, what do you think?
Well, Spider actually made some very good points, and I was initially going to say that I feel like it's kind of like our reality, and it's completely subjective, to each individual. And if you believe it's sacred, then it could be. But if you don't believe it's sacred, then it's not. And the more massive the audience, the more likely a place is to feel sacred. But outside of that, there are some places that have weird energies, like Spider mentioned, people being drawn to certain places and building stuff, like we love to, reference American Gods on here. People go to certain places and build things. And what if that is some sort of resonance field drawing people towards it? And it's like interacting because there's some sort of electrical field or electrical grid lattice of some sort within the earth that we don't understand, hiding underneath, hidden, that we can't see. And that's maybe some of the stuff that Tesla was working with when he was talking about ley lines. What if ley lines are some sort of electrical energy source that we don't fully understand?
And,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was it.
Very good
I
point.
ramble.
Very good point. So what I want to do is I want to get into the very first location that we have for tonight, and that is Mount Kailash. Now, I probably said that wrong, but Kailash, it's located in the Ngari prefecture of the autonomous region of China, known as Tibet, and is one of the most sacred mountains in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the lesser-known Bon religion. Its peak is 21,778 feet high, and it draws pilgrims from all around the world. Now, in the Hindu tradition, it is the home of Lord Shiva himself. Now, as many of you know, Shiva is the god of destruction and transformation. It is said that he resides at the summit, and there he meditates in eternal bliss. Now, in Buddhism, it is regarded as the cosmic center of the universe, also known as Mount Meru, and it is considered the axis of the universe. Now, in these traditions, this is basically the end all be all. This is the gateway into the next life. And I got a great question for Stephen coming up here after I finish this up. The name itself is thought to have been derived from the word crystal, but the mountain has other names as well, such as Kangri Rinpoche, which is precious snow mountain, water's flower, mountain of the sea water, and this one will grab you, the 9 stacked swastikas mountain. Remember, folks, swastikas existed before World
Okay.
War II. So
Can you
not
explain what they
forget that.
meant before World War II? Do you actually know?
Just part of the religious belief system.
Oh,
I
okay.
Not
think
off
it's
the top of
four
my head.
elements too, like 4 corners of the earth and something like that. It's,
like
it's supposed to
Avatar.
be a connective, like a symbol of peace, of coming together, because they come around in the center. So it's like the 4
the
corners
irony.
of the earth coming together. So it was pretty
Yeah.
crazy if some.
It just
church
it's
had to take that.
it's derived from the word svastika, meaning conducive to well-being. It's a symbol of auspiciousness and good luck in various cultures. It symbolizes the sun in Hinduism, prosperity and good luck. That's the right facing. And night or tantric aspects of Kali, which is the left facing. It also appears in Jainism as part of the Jain flag, and in Buddhism as a symbol of the Buddhist footprints. Before its adoption by the Nazi Party, it was widely used in the Western world as a decorative motif and a symbol of good luck, almost like the all-seeing eye.
I'd also like to point out, James said they were also used in Native American symbolism as well.
It's I mean, they were
It was
All over the
along.
place.
Yeah, it was like a universal symbol almost. Probably easy to make too, you know.
Yeah.
So just getting that out of the way, because the swastika has been along a lot longer than Nazi Germany. Now, the mountain itself is a sacred place where the heavens and earth converge. And it is also thought to be a bridge to the other world. A lot of these places have that sacred aspect of it, you know. And we're going to talk about one that I know Steven's familiar with, that sort of bridge the gap between our world and the world beyond. So we need to keep that kind of in focus. Now, pilgrims will make their way to this holy mountain to take in the splendor and the spiritual beauty. And the view of the mountain itself is, I mean, it just brings a sense of balance and where harmony reigns. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a picture because I feel like I need all of us to see this mountain, because it is like, this is a beautiful piece of nature, I think. So I have to show chat this, because it is very it's almost breathtaking.
Sinai?
It's almost freaking breathtaking, to be quite fair and frank.
Before we see it, I want to make a prediction. Is it Mount Sinai?
No, the mountain we're talking about. Oh, Steven, sometimes you make me want to
Fire me?
Kind of.
Yep.
There you go. That's what it looks like.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah,
Love
it's
it.
very impressive. It is very symbolic. Like something like that, you see
Facts.
that stepping out of the landscape. It's no surprise, really, that people are going to see it as something special. It's not just this rise or this hill over there. I mean, that stands out.
Both.
100%. Yes. So it's no wonder why people would have these thoughts about what it is and what it could be or what it's part of. Now, if you notice, it has that pyramid shape, which I think people just run to regardless because of what we've been taught. I think you saw that same thing and were like, never had seen a pyramid before in your life. That's not how you would explain it. You know what I mean? Just be a triangle. But it is also one of the few mountains in the world that have never been climbed, ever. The people that, like the Association of Mountain Climbers, when they go to these places, they stay away from this one because they know it's sacred, and everybody knows it's sacred. So you have to kind of ask yourself too, is there really something up there? Now, Shiva, not Shiva, sacred is a very interesting point because what we see is the idea of sacred, right? Would mean that there's some sort of folklore, mythology, reality behind it, you know, because somebody would be daring enough. You get one of us Americans that are just don't care, we would try to climb this thing. But the fact nobody has even tried it is interesting. That's all I'm going
Eyelash.
to say. Put that in the chat for him, would you please, Stephen? Um, and so that to me is interesting. Um, the distance from Stonehenge in the UK to that mountain is precisely 6,666 kilometers, which is also the distance to the North Pole. And astonishingly, the distance to the South Pole is 13,332 kilometers, exactly twice the distance to Stonehenge or the North Pole. Now, I know a lot of people will take that and run with it, which you could, I guess, because the poles have kind of shifted and things like that. So I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, but sometimes people go a little overboard on the numbers, and it's just that they're numbers. It's nothing more. It's nothing less. There's nothing hidden. So this is what I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier about this mountain, because this mountain's fairly new to me. I would say I've learned about it in the last maybe like year and a half. I didn't know very well about it, and I really didn't know much about it until I started researching it. But I think personally that it's part of the Earth's natural energy grid. I don't think it's any. I don't want to say superstitious because I don't want to be offensive, because people do have these beliefs, and I don't want to tear that down.
Maybe spiritual.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think
Esoteric?
I don't think it's a spiritual energy. I think it's a natural Earth energy that emanates through it.
It sounds like ley lines from the way you explain it.
Right. Now, that being said, we don't know what the Earth's natural energy can do or interact with in terms of, like, if we put some form of wiring down there, how does it react to the wiring as opposed to how we make electricity? That kind of thing. So we don't know what kind of doors it can open, this, that, and the other. We don't know if it's a place where interdimensional travel happens. I know people watching this now are like, that dude is crazy. A little bit, yes, you're right, I am. But these are all theories. I have no proof of this. Let me put this out there too before people start thinking I have proof. I don't have any proof of this. This is just a hypothesis.
It's just fun to think about.
It's just fun to think about, exactly. So to me, it just seems like it's on that natural energy grid. And so that kind of gets the brain ticking. So I'll ask Spider this first question, because I wrote out questions for y'all this time.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
We're
you
in
got your own
trouble.
questions, big troubles. Do you think the religions have given this place power, or do you think it's ley lines?
That's a tricky question, because it goes back to what I said in the opening, in that there are places that seem auspicious, and looking at that mountain again, it's easy to see how somebody could look at that and feel a sense of awe, or feel a sense of, this is a great place. There's something about this that just, I feel good about it. I feel tingly, whatever. Whether there is actually an energy of any kind there anyway, that's hard to say, because again, you'd have to do measurements, you'd have to do various tests, and even then there are places that, even we've been to places where I think you can feel things that can't be measured. But a lot of it, I think, is mostly going to be a combination of the impact of the natural landscape as we see it, because again, it's very impressive, it's very imposing, and you combine that with the thought that something this impressive must be connected to the great divinity of the world, or what we worship or something, because who else could create something that fantastic? And so you automatically connect the two and they become kind of one thing. It doesn't really matter necessarily where the feeling came from at that point. It then becomes part of your religious storytelling and part of your religious belief. Now, does that devalue anything? I don't think so. I think if you're fervent in your belief that this is a special place, and I think we should pay it the respect it's deserved, then it's a special place for you. And whether other people believe that or not really doesn't matter, because you only see the reality that is there for you. And if you and a bunch of like-minded people are all seeing the same thing, say this is a sacred spot, then you're going to feel that energy every time you go there.
Because it's already been put in your head. So you're going to, and if you're a devout follower, you're sort of absorbed all of that anyway. So you're definitely going to feel something. But I would like to see, and I always ponder this experiment, but I think would be a worthwhile one. You in this situation could take somebody that has never heard of this mountain. Mm-hmm. This is one of the few things that this would probably be easy to do. Find somebody that is in another region, maybe of the United States, maybe somebody that's maybe like a state that's cut off from sort of civilization, maybe like a North Dakota, West Virginia, New Mexico type of thing. I wouldn't say New Mexico, but like I'm trying to think of something on the West that would be considered kind of cut off from civilization. And take somebody from any of those regions and put them in front of that mountain. And outside of them saying that's amazing, because I think that's just going to be a natural reaction to something much bigger than you, right? You're going to be kind of like, oh, I'm kind of in awe of this, this formation. What do they say after? Is there a feeling they have? Is there a shift in their attitude? Obviously, there's going to be a shift in oxygen because you're higher up than you would normally be. So these are all things I would like to see studied, and that ability to happen, because not many people know about Mount Kailash. I don't know if you two did. Like I said, I knew bits and pieces.
I've kind of stumbled across it and done a few, like maybe about 5 hours worth of research on it. Okay,
so you've done probably more than I have. Fair enough. Good on you, by the way. Now, my question for you is this. Do you see similarities between this and our other principal location we discussed last week, or connect to that location, Mount Fuji? Yeah. Another sacred mountain.
I actually think it looks very similar from the image you showed us a minute ago. Okay. And as we know, a lot of times throughout history, you know, like the Great Flood and, you know, God, Allah, Yahweh, you know, a lot of different cultures develop their own slightly different, you know, beliefs around religions and stuff like that. But it all seems to trace back to an original thing of some sort. So maybe this is a similar thing, and maybe there is a similar mountain like Mount Fuji in Japan, or this over here, Kailash, wherever this is located, or Mount Sinai, or, you know, whatever else. There's a lot of different places that are just really impressive and give you this sense that, you know, this is something sacred, not because of anything that you can explain with words, but just a feeling that you get.
Do you think, like I said, most people know about Fuji. Do you think that same feeling would be in effect for Kailash, or no?
I think it really depends on the individual person and like how spiritual they are, and you know, like what kind of things they know. Because if they believe in a God, then I definitely think seeing something that huge, that massive, they would likely think that, oh yeah, definitely God built this. This is, you know, spiritual. But if they don't believe in a God and they still see something that massive, that impressive, they may not think that a God built it, but they might still question, like, you know, even for nature, this is still impressive. So like, how did this happen?
True. I mean, and that's a solid point you bring up too, is you're going to question what it is, why it is, right? And no matter if you are a religious person or you're an atheist or whatever, what have you, right? you're still going to question it because it exists as a larger than life
It's an anomaly.
thing, an aspect of life that you don't see every day unless you're part of that culture. It's a very much culture shock for those of us who, I've seen mountains in West Virginia and Tennessee,
Mhm.
South Carolina, North Carolina, but this is a whole, this is the Himalayan mountain range.
Okay.
This isn't just, you know what I mean? So to
You
me,
actually make a very good point there.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say you actually made me think about it, and you made a very good point, because while I was thinking about it, I'm thinking about, like you said, I'm thinking about it from an outsider perspective. But if you think about it from the perspective of someone who's lived in a village on that mountain their whole life, they probably won't think it's sacred. They'll probably just be like us, like, oh, yeah, it's a mountain. Big deal. Whatever.
I think you're wrong, this is the reason
Okay.
why. Because we are not a homogenous people. These are homogenous people, right? They all pretty much have the same. Like Japan is a homogenous culture. I think I'm
Yeah.
using that word right.
Yeah.
If
They're all
I'm
the
not, please
same,
let me
right?
know in chat. Yes.
Yeah.
So you have the same thing. And if all these people believe in the same belief system and they hold that sacred, I'm sure there's people that don't hold it as sacred as, say, like a more devout person, obviously, because you're going to have that with religious groups. But I think there's still a reverence for it.
So like a
You
church or
know?
something. Even if you're not
Mhm.
religious, you can still respect a church
Yes, of course. Yeah, you don't have
as
to be
holy
religious
or
to respect
sacred.
it.
To add to
Yes.
that, I think that's a correct assumption that the people, if you live on the slope of this impressive mountain for generations,
Yeah.
you frequently,
You get used to it.
no, not necessarily that. You
Okay.
frequently have, when people come and they talk to you, like, hey, what's it like here? They tell you pretty flat out that you have to respect the mountain. And it might not be because there's anything divine about it particularly. They might not have that particular outlook on it, but they respect it for what it is. It's such a monumental piece of the land. It's a feature that's been there, and it's been a feature of their civilization for so long. They respect it. It's almost a deity in itself, whether you worship it or not. You respect it and you see it as the mountain is what it is. And if you just go up there thinking that, oh, I'm just going to climb to the top, whatever, you're not going to be respected by the mountain.
No.
You're going to have accidents. And is that accidents because it's a divine being and it's punishing you? Not necessarily. It's just one of those things that if you go up into a place like that and you're disrespectful, nature's going to fight back on you. And the people who live there understand that. It's the same as if you live in a great forest or a swamp or another big natural place. You don't have to necessarily make it out to be a religious experience, but to them, it still is a spiritual thing on some level, whether they consider it that way or not. And you can hear it when you talk to people like that. Like people in the Appalachians, the hills and the mountains, they have a life to them. And the people that live up there, they're like, hey, you got to respect it because you can feel it out here. They don't necessarily have to say that the mountain's going to come to life and smash you and eat an unbeliever.
But you might disappear.
Yeah, it reminds me of all the stories about the Native Americans and like their stories about their lands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting opinions from both of you. Interesting answers for those questions. The next sacred place I want to get into is the Kaaba. Now, the Kaaba is located in Saudi Arabia and it is one of the most sacred sites in all of Islam. It is the location that looks like a stone block. It's based like a giant square block. And it's situated in the center of the most important mosque in Islam, the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. And the Muslims, they consider this to be the place or the house of God, almost like the Ark of the Covenant was. So something to bear in mind. But I already knew most of this, right? The next part I did not know. So I learned something new today, and I'm going to share that with all of you because I don't like to hold knowledge and keep it hidden. We got to let it out. So at one time, there were other Kaabas There wasn't just this one Kaaba. There was a Kaaba of Zoroaster. There was a Kaaba in Mecca, as we just said. There was one in the South Arabian city of Gaiman, and there was another in the city of Al-Ablat in modern-day Tabala. So you have multiple of these things. Now, this is what I want you to really hear me say when I say this. There is a stone in the Kaaba. We all know this, right? Supposedly it was a white stone. It turned black after it inherited the sins of man. And people make pilgrimages to this place. They go around it 7 times and they try to touch or kiss the stone. Okay, that's just part of their belief system. However, something that's interesting here is the fact that the other Kaabas also had stones in them as well. So this wasn't the only one that had this stone. There was a red stone at the Kaaba of Gaiman. There was a white stone in Tabala. So, and then obviously the one in Mecca, if you believe it was white at one time or it was black. Now you have a black, white, and red stone inside of basically what looks like a rectangle or a square. Okay, keep this in the back of your noggins. We're gonna move on for a second.
I was ready now.
The original Kaaba was actually built by Ibrahim and Ishmael on Allah's instructions, almost like the tabernacle with Abraham and Isaac. And he was going to sacrifice, and God said, no, don't sacrifice your son Isaac. I just wanted to see if you would do it. So then this is the original Kaaba. This is the one before, supposedly before the one we have now. But it says, verily the first house of worship appointed for mankind was that at Bakah, full of blessing and guidance for mankind. Behold, we gave the site to Ibrahim of the sacred house, saying, associate not anything in worship with me, and sanctify my house for those who compass it round, or stand up, or bow, or prostrate themselves therein in prayer. So here we see that this is built on the orders of God, much like the Ark of the Covenant, right? And the Ark of the Covenant had powers. All right, we can scientifically break that down. We can go into Joshua and how the Ark was taken around Jericho 7 times, horns blew, walls fell. There's a couple other different instances, people touching it and basically vaporizing. That's we can get into that later on. But in this instance, what I'm kind of wondering is, given all of the other Kaabas and their stones at one time, obviously these Kaabas don't exist. A few of them were pretty much destroyed, and the stones were not there either. This reminds me of an energy sort of like a relay system. You would pinpoint beam to beam to beam to beam and do something with that. Whether that's energy, whether that would be a way to create something like the Baghdad battery, something of this nature. We have these stones, and Arabia has always been a very strange, what's the word I'm looking for? Uncanny location as a whole throughout history. And that's not an insult, because I would love to go and explore. It's not the point. Something is over there. Let's stop beating around the bush. Something is over there. All right. There's a reason everybody's over there fighting. There's a reason it's a highly contested location. And it has been for generations, longer than any of us sitting here have been alive. Right? And you start finding all these little bits and pieces, these
Fit
little
them together.
scientific aspects that can be put together in a way that says this is how they were able to do it. Not saying that God wasn't involved, but God gave mankind the ability to do these
knowledge.
things. So yes, exactly. Anyway, I'm moving a little bit further than
No,
I should, but I'm very
you-
fascinated with this.
You got me thinking, though.
Please.
You remember the Knights Templar? Isn't there a story that the Knights Templar would gather a bunch of holy relics together at the end of the world and bring them out and reveal forbidden knowledge?
Yeah, but there's who would do that
The Knights Templar.
if they still existed.
But maybe they're in hiding, because there is a theory that the Knights Templar integrated into other cultures and other groups and went into
course.
hiding so they could come out later when the time mattered.
We will put a pin in that conversation,
Okay.
and we will come back to that because we can talk about that.
Yeah.
In his exegesis, which is like a commentary on the Quran, Ibn Kathir says that there are two possibilities for the reason why this was built. One, it was a place of worship for the Malaka, which are the angels, and then it was a house of worship until the flood came and wiped it out. And then this is when Ibrahim and Ishmael rebuilt there. The other one was just that it was a place for people to worship as a whole. Like it was just a site. But the interesting part, like I said, is during Tawaf. This is when the pilgrims circle the Kaaba 7 times. Once again, let's jump back. Another revelation just popped in the old dome piece. Why 7? They marched around Jericho 7 times too before the walls fell.
Isn't 7 God's number?
Yes, but we can't look at it in that same frame because we're using different numbers than God would have used.
True.
So we have to think about that kind of stuff.
In numerology, 7 is the number of spirit, the number of spirituality and divinity, but not necessarily of being divine.
Okay.
It's a number of divine knowledge, of sacred knowledge, of that sort of thing, and a connection. You don't get into the numbers of the actual divine until you get up into some of the doubled numbers, which are not, you can't just double every number and say,
Right.
44 is divine, 55 is divine. There's
Right.
specific ones. 11
Yep.
is specific because it's the first of those numbers, and it's
Yeah.
2 ones, which are particular. They're both, 1 is the number of God, basically, as in the number 1, the number 1 guy.
The monad.
And 12 is not, like, you can keep on going. Those aren't special. Those get broken down. 22 is supposed to be a doubling of 11, but not always. It's very rare to see it that way. So even if you see a 22, you can't automatically think, oh, that's extra super divine. There's extra energy coming through here, because it could just mean 4. So, but 7 is a connection. There was something particular about 7, just like there was a particular about 3 and 9 and
6.
certain other things. They fit into calculations because these people were mathematicians back in the day, not the way that we do it today. They knew a lot of things that we would consider equations as like second nature, because that's how you built your houses. That's how you arranged your fields. That's how you arranged your temples based on these numbers to make sure that it matched the sun, it matched the moon, it matched all these things. So, and as the practice went on, those particular numbers would stand out. And when they would stand out, you would look at what circumstances they were standing out in. And obviously, this must have a connection to that. And while it may all have been coincidence, it has all worked throughout history. All of these various equations have been correct throughout history, which is why it's easy to say that they're divine. But yes, 7 is a number of sacred knowledge, and but not particularly being divine yourself.
And there it is. Questions. Let's start with Stephen. Do you think if the other Kaabas were still in existence, do you think the stones would sync up, or do you think they ever did at all? Do you think this was something they started to build and it They just couldn't finish it? Or do
Now,
you think it was something that they finished and they used it?
I was actually developing a really weird idea while you were talking about the stones,
Of course,
actually.
of course.
It all reminds me very eerily of one of your favorite games, Assassin's Creed, where they keep looking for the holy
True.
relics and the holy
True.
objects because they have special powers. So
Mm.
here's what I was thinking. What if the 3 stones, 3, Holy Trinity, like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is very symbolic and religious. So what if the 3 stones was supposed to represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but their version of that, and one stone, the white stone, was the stone of purity, the stone of humans who had never committed actual sins in their life and lived their lives as saints and tried to help other people. The red stone would have been the stone of human pain, and it would have encoded all the war, misery, bloodshed, and violence of humanity. And then the black stone, the stone of human sin, would have been the worst stone of all and encoded both the pain and the evil actions of mankind, such as when the English came over and murdered all the Indians, and the plague, and the Crusades, and all the other evil actions that humanity has done. And what if the 3 stones together are supposed to represent all of human history within a holy trinity?
Okay. Very, very interesting note with that but I think it predates Christianity and Islam. The other Kaabas, I would believe.
Irrelevant if time is fluid, though.
Here's the problem, though. The temple or the Kaaba of Zoroaster refutes your point only because it's a whole different religion. So the concept of the Kaaba existed before Islam, because you wouldn't build a Kaaba to another prophet in Islam, because that'd be adultery. So you wouldn't build something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was something that was built for Zoroaster himself, the prophet of Zoroastrianism, which you can buy my new book where I talk ad nauseum about Zoroastrianism. But well thought out point, and I do appreciate that. So excellent. Spider, do you think the sin energy is still trapped in it? Or do you even think that it could be an entity trapped in these things?
Ooh.
The Kaaba in Mecca is a stone of meteoric iron.
Right.
It came from space, which is an interesting point, because meteoric iron has magnetic field. It's not ridiculously strong. It's not going to draw it's not like a cartoon where they walk by and, the metal in my pockets is flying out.
My keys just flew out. Yeah, my keys just flew out.
It has a magnetic field, which we have iron on this planet that can do that, but it's not all iron can do it. It's very specific. It's a very specific kind of iron material. And walking around it, you have to wonder the effect of all that movement, all that, everything that you're doing, how that's affecting that magnetic field. Because fields are, regardless of whether you can see or feel them, they're still physical on some level. Now, when I made the point that it came from space, not to try to devalue any sort of religious outlook on it, but to also make the point that ancient cultures knew a lot more about space than we give them credit for. Not that they were going up there, as far as we know, but that they knew more about it than we thought. The Mesopotamians knew how many planets were in the solar system, including the extra bonus planet that we're just now finally believing is actually out there. They finally got measurements to say that
I saw
there's
that.
another planet out there. Is it Nibiru? Who knows? Who cares? That's a whole separate thing. But it's just fascinating that an ancient culture would say there's all this stuff out there. And they, in the oldest religions that we know, dating back to Sumeria, they believed that, as most cultures did, that their gods and what they worshipped came from the sky, but not necessarily the sky from beyond the sky, from out beyond the planet, which means they came from space. So anything that comes from space easily is divine. Because why would it not be? To an ancient culture who's planet bound, who can't go out there, who sees fantastic beings, at least from what their writings say, coming from out there, anything that comes from out there could be something special. It could be something particular. It could be from the divine beings that we worship. And while the later religions like Christianity and Islam, they instead have more of the idea of the heavens rather than, space and all that kind of stuff. They've distilled it into a different idea. But the fact that something came from outside of what we know, it had to have come from a divine place. Because the divine is out there, the sinful is down below. And if it didn't come from down below, it had to come from the divine. So,
As above, so below.
as far as the other two stones, it's possible that they were each meteoric in some fashion, or it's possible maybe they were different materials. Since they're lost, we don't know. We don't know what they were made of. But was the red stone red because it was painted red, or was it naturally red, or was it burned red? What, who knows? Did it come from Mars? Maybe not. Maybe it was just a stone that was a little bit on the brown side.
What if? Wait a minute. Before you finish, was the other stone a? Would you be able to tell if it enters Earth, if it entered Earth's atmosphere, or if it was brought here?
That's another good point, because a lot of these meteoric stones, because there's more than one that's ended up in a worship capacity in different cultures around the planet. The one at Mecca is the most famous, but there's been other cultures that have found it and they believe it's special. It's because they saw it come down. They saw the trail of fire. They saw it come down. Now, the question is, when they see that, do they say, oh, it's just falling here naturally, or the divine is sending this to us? It's something they're giving us. It's a gift. And in the case of Mecca, I believe whoever found it believed that it was sent here. Originally, if you're going to say that it was the original altar, part of the original altar that was going to be used to sacrifice Abraham's son, then you'd have to assume that it's a special place for that. God picked it out specifically because it came from God, which would mean it came from the divine. So you had to have seen it come down, or someone would have to have known that it came down.
No,
it was different.
What I'm saying is, what if it was brought down? Not
like in a ship?
Like in a ship, yes.
Well, I mean, that's always possible. I'm trying to stray more into the natural science territory.
No. I think
hypotheticals.
But I think we have to do both here, because there's been, if it's a fuel source or the ability for a fuel source, if we pinpoint ancient astronaut theory, which I think you should. If you bring in one thing, I think you should bring in the other aspects of it so people can get a well-rounded view. Does it mean I believe that? No. But I think entertaining that leads to interesting questions. Okay, maybe it's not totally this, but maybe there's something there. You know what I mean? Maybe there's something there. We are getting close, and I would like to finish this so we don't have to be here. Excuse me, an extra 4 hours, though we could talk about this for 4 hours. I would have no qualms about that. The last place I want to talk about, in keeping with a religious theme, is the church at Aksum in Ethiopia. So for those of you that don't know what this place holds, this is the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, and it's an Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo church. And what's inside of it, you may ask? The Ark of the Covenant.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I got excited about it too. Now, according to legend, for those of you that know, Menelik I, who was the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, supposedly absconded with the ark, outran Solomon's people. Didn't know that, because what he had done is he had switched the arks. So he took an ark with him and left a fake ark that looked almost like it, enough to where it would buy them some time to leave the city with the ark. Now, this is a story that was passed down through the Kebra Nagast. However, Coptic priest Abu al-Makarim says that this story was popular before the Kebra Nagast. So this legend existed before the Kebra Nagast, which now we're talking. He even goes on to say the Abyssinians possess also the Ark of the Covenant. Very interesting, because a lot of people have different theories on the Ark. Some say it was taken. I personally believe that it was taken by in Hezekiah's time and melted down. Because if you read the Bible, once the Ark of the Covenant was only necessary to get the Jews to where they were a bigger population. When they were a smaller population, it had to be used for certain things. But once you got to be a big enough population, those things aren't in use anymore. And the invading army comes in and they say, oh, this thing's cool. It's gold. Let's melt it down. Or let's do this. Let's do that. That's what I think. Anyways, moving on. So the church guardian is the only one that is allowed to view the ark. Only one. The let me make sure I pronounce this, Kohanim, which are the priests, which are the Konahim are the priest class. So the non-Konahim or the non-priest class are forbidden based on the dangers that could occur. Now, if we strike back into the Bible, it tells us of two men who were carrying the ark, and one slipped and touched the actual ark, and he was vaporized. Sorry, this stuff fascinates me to no end. And died instantaneously. And there's a couple different aspects of that, of the ark. They had to build a whole temple to house this thing. They had to have certain measurements of rods, certain measurements of gold, certain dimensions that had to be adhered to 100% for it to be the holy Ark of the Covenant. It could have been anything less if even the smallest detail was off. And that's important here for what we're going to be continuing to talk about. So the guardian, they're the ones who get to see it. That's it. And once they are chosen by their predecessor, before the predecessor passes, that's it for life. And if a person is not chosen, the monks get together and they elect a person. And once this person is chosen, they basically go into exile. Well, I don't want to say exile.
Seclusion.
But seclusion, thank you. They go into seclusion in the Ark of the Chapel of the Covenant for the rest of their lives. And all they do is they pray before it and light incense before it. Which is, once again, if this really is the Ark, right? But that's a whole nother issue, right? Spider, I ask you this question first. What do you think causes the supposed radioactive aspect of the Ark? And why do you think people haven't tried to basically kick the door in and see it?
There's a couple things to that, and I'm going to try to keep things succinct so that we don't go too far out into the weeds with this. They have, or I believe they do have something there. Whether it's the Ark or not, I don't know. And the reason I believe that is because each of these monks who watch the Ark, who are the ones tasked with, I am the Ark's keeper now, they don't pass of natural causes. They pass of cancers, and they pass of different things. Almost everyone has passed from cancers. These are from interview, because they'll let, to a point, they've talked to different people. Different people have
Yep.
gone up. Josh Gates from the show Expedition X has gone out there, and whether you believe he's just a showbiz guy or not, he's found some pretty cool stuff, and he's talked to a lot of interesting people, and he talked to one of them, the guy who was the guy in there, and he tried, of course, to convince him to see if he could see it, and he said no. But the guy, even he was suffering from cancer at the time, but you can't take him to put him in a hospital. He's there to guard the thing.
Yeah, for life.
And he believes that. He says, it's just how it is. It's part of what happens when you're too close to it for too long of a time. Now, if that's a true thing, if it's that dangerous, why hasn't it left a murder spree all across history when it disappeared? Maybe it has, and we just don't know. Or maybe potentially what's inside of it is one of two things. If what is inside of it from the religious aspect is God's favor, basically, maybe he withdraws it once in a while, because he'd be able to do that. If he was God, he would just, I'm just going to choose not to put myself in there right now, because maybe I need my people to take us someplace, or maybe it's not necessary right now. Maybe it has to be more hidden, and this will attract attention if it's got my power and grace floating around in it. On the other hand, maybe it's a power source that has intermittently failed throughout history. Maybe it's unstable. Maybe at the time when they were carrying it through the desert, it was at full power. So when you touch it, you're dead. Shouldn't have done that. But maybe after a while of it sitting and it being dormant, that's why the invading army came in, supposedly. Maybe that's how they could have melted it down, if that's what happened. But if it's in Ethiopia, we have to assume that it wasn't melted down. But again, how would they get it there without leaving the trail of destruction? Because maybe it's unstable, maybe it's failing, and maybe it just takes decades and hundreds of years to fail if it's that kind of a powerful power source. There's so many questions about it, and you can go to so many directions with it.
Well, my question to you would be this then. Why hasn't anybody tried to invade and just take it? Ethiopia is not a very powerful country, and the right people could just waltz in and take it. Unless it's that unstable to where if it is moved, it could be a catastrophic event.
That's the other question. I have the feeling that most of the world doesn't believe it's there, and that there's just, even for like some two-bit dictator who doesn't have a lot of brains, who thinks that there's something there, I don't think it's worth going in there to try to deal with it, at least for what the outside perspective is. People have tried to go see it and they've been turned away, and it's kind of interesting that they haven't busted in to try to see it. But maybe it's because, hey, look, I've got these cancers, I've got this stuff going on, you really don't want to touch it, dude. Like, you really shouldn't do that. And maybe that's convincing enough. Maybe that's convincing enough to turn people away. Like, I don't want that to happen to me. Because a lot of dictator types are going to also be cowards, right? They're not going to be, they don't want to get killed by whatever the thing is. Maybe they want to use it against their enemies, but they don't want to get killed themselves. So maybe they go there and maybe the attempt would be made, but it's too dangerous for me to try it. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wait for some other sucker to do it. And then again, like I said, a lot of the rest of the world, I believe, just they don't think there's anything there. It's tempting just to assume that it's just a story and it's made up and there's nothing there. But the sticking point again is that the monks all come down with this condition, and it's only when they're tasked with watching whatever the object is. They don't develop these things earlier in their life when they're just attending to the grounds of the temple there, right? So that's an interesting point.
Stephen, I pose this question for you, good sir. Do you think that there are other things very similar to the Ark that have been found that you could sort of connect?
That's a bit of a difficult one, because I don't necessarily have any specifics or any actual evidence to support my theories, but I do believe that artifacts similar to the Ark have been found, and I believe that more are out there waiting to be found, which
Okay.
is actually one reason why I'm so excited for the ice to melt in Antarctica, is because I have a very, very strong feeling that there are going to be some deeply religious artifacts discovered in some ancient ruins when the ice melts in Antarctica. And as for specifics, um, I'm not sure exactly how to word this properly, but I feel like there is something uh, that can interact with reality at a layer that we don't quite understand. And I wonder if maybe there's something hidden in Antarctica, some super secret technology, and that's why the 13 nations have that peace treaty. Because think about it: if you took a cell phone back to the like the 1800s, the cowboy days, they wouldn't understand what that was, and the early government was in its early stages during that time. And I'm just making my own personal beliefs here, but I believe if the government had gotten access to some sort of advanced technology that they didn't understand, they would have done everything within their power to hide it from the public, even if that meant making peace treaties with their biggest enemies.
Okay. Okay. Great. Once again, great discourse tonight, fellas. Thank you for continuing to push me to think in different directions and different mindset states so that I can, understand what's going on and everything. For me, I think that a lot of this stuff is sacred, and I do think there's some energy there. Whether that can be explained via ley lines or stone manipulation or radioactive half lives. Uh, there's things going on our planet that we don't have answers to right now. And maybe the upper echelon folks do have those answers. But as for me and my Uncanny team here, we do not have those answers. So that's why each week we're bringing you the good stuff. Now, we will not be here next week. So if you show up here looking for us, it's going to be an empty parking lot. There's not going to be any pre-gaming going on. There's not going to be any lines of ravenous fans, ladies that faint when we start getting out of the car. We're not going to have that next week, y'all. So don't show up here for that. But we'll be back September 4th, and we'll be talking about cloning. And that, I believe, is whose topic? Is that Steven's? Yep. Are you kicking off our new season?
Yep.
So Steven will be kicking off our new season. All right, there we go. You remember when he was an intern? I do. They grow up so fast. They really do. They grow up so fast. Anyways, everyone, from us to you to the world, we love you guys. We hope you guys have a beautiful, blessed, and wonderful day. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Have a good one.